Perfect, with the previous webinars. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So some of the things that we're going to be covering today, I'm just going to be giving you some updates regarding the stipend module, some of the things that we've been up to, and then we're actually going to go into the content part of our webinar, which is going to be regarding everything processing applications, some of the different tools that are available to you, some recommendations that I have as well, and some of the different features like the go to batch feature. And then we may not have time to cover everything regarding the last component, which is closing out. Once you have, switch all the applications to approve and you know who's going to actually be receiving stipends, which would be when you're switching applications from approved to paid. But we are going to be having a separate webinar to walk through that specifically so that everybody can feel comfortable with what it is that they're doing, so that everybody can close out their stipend successfully, which I know I have a lot of veteran counties here that have already done this maybe 2 or 3 years, but also for some of my newer counties that have joined us, that's going to be available. And if you ever need any support on the side, we can always schedule some time. And then also I'll be providing some resources as well. And so I know most of you already know me. I've either been in contact with you via email or we met for the purposes of integration related things for stipend module, or for any of my newer counties that have started to implement their stipend program this year. You definitely have worked with me throughout the process of, doing some training and kind of going over everything regarding stipend module. So my name is Angel Duran Ramirez. I primarily support the process of integrating counties with the registry. So everything from the data sharing agreements through the process of actually, having whatever your QRIS data system in your county is, talk with the registry so that we can send you data. And then I'm also the lead for the stipend module, so I provide all the technical assistance for that. And then today we do have 2 other team members. We have Rocio Martinez, our operations manager. She's going to be our expert in the chat, so she also is going to be answering questions in the chat as well. So I'll pass it on to her so that she can share what it is that she does here at the registry.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rocio Martinez. I'm the operations manager. So I just manage the day-to-day operations of the registry and oversee our data entry processes. So if you have any questions, like Angel said, I'll try to answer them in the chat, and anything I don't know, I'll make sure to highlight to Angel so that way he can answer for you.
Thank you. And then we also have one of our data entry supervisors present as well. Her name is Roxanne. So she works hand in hand with Rocio. And fun fact, all 3 of us actually implement a stipend program here in the county of Los Angeles, specifically for family, friend, and neighbors. So we also are actively utilizing the stipend module as stipend administrators. So one of the little things that I wanted to share is that, as you know, we've been working really hard to onboard everybody, all the counties. In terms of integration, I'm super excited because now we have a total of 54 counties that have completed a data sharing agreement. And the majority of the counties have a sync turned on. So their system is talking with the registry. So we're sending data over to all of you. And out of those 54 counties, a total of 24 counties are utilizing the stipend module to implement their stipend programs, whether it's for workforce pathways or any, stipends provided through other funds. And I'm super excited because we also have a total of 2 counties that are implementing their EETD grant via the registry, and we have another county that is interested and potentially going to be doing that. So that's one of the things that I'm super happy and proud about, and we wouldn't be able to, have made this much progress without all of you. One of the other things that we always like to touch upon is the work that we do regarding accessibility and equity. So we are always continuously working towards trying to make all of our materials and the registry as accessible and equitable as possible. So some of those things that we, that are happening or that are in place, anybody that has a registry profile at all levels of usership, whether it's a participant, provider, or an employer or a stipend administrator or any other type of county level administrator, everybody has access to their profile and they have data control 24/7. We also have a resource website that was launched a couple months ago, and that is continuously updated as well. And it's mobile friendly. And that website contains all of our resources for every level of usership. So we have resources for providers, once again, for employers, for anybody that's a trainer and utilizes the training calendar, and for county level administrators, both for anybody that is working with QRIS and anybody that is doing stipend related things. We also have a training calendar that's available across the state, and individuals are able to search and look for training via the training calendar. And there's also a section where anybody that signs up for a training via the registry has the option of requesting special accommodations. We also have been doing a lot of work to make sure that we are ADA compliant. And then additionally, everything regarding the registry, so the registry itself, our resource website, and all of our technical assistance materials, everything that's like a user guide, everything that is, written, all the videos, all of those things, we have them available. The majority of them in 3 languages, and we are continuing to do work to get everything translated. So everything is obviously in English, but everything is also available in Spanish, and then Chinese, which is like simplified Chinese, and for some materials is like a mix of Mandarin, and then also the other language, which I'm forgetting in this moment. But this is a lot of the work that we're doing just to, ensure that everything is as accessible and equitable as possible. And if at any point you have any ideas of things that we can continue to do, or ways in which we can continue to expand this, we always welcome feedback, and we want the feedback. So you can always feel free to reach out and share your ideas. Which also I may be hosting another focus group specifically for stipends again this year at the end of the fiscal year. So just kind of keep that in mind. I may be sending out a survey to see who may want to be part of that, because we also are always continuously doing some development on the registry for the stipend module specifically. Some of the benefits that are, that we have in terms of being able to utilize the stipend module, all the data is in one place, and I think that's really awesome, not only for the applicant itself, but also for the stipend administrator, because not only do you have all the application data, which instead of back in the day when individuals would maybe be filling out a paper application and they had to fill out every single question one by one, a lot of the information that would normally go in an application automatically gets pulled from the participant's profile, like name, employment, all of those things. So all of that is available to you in the different components of the application, which we'll walk through once we're in the registry. But also you're able to access the documents that individuals upload that you've made a requirement, whether it's like a W-9 or a professional growth plan, or, transcripts, PD, all of those sorts of things. So everything is in one place, and you're able to just really go in, look at the application, and you don't have to keep track of a whole bunch of different things. Also, along with that, the application process is simplified for the participant, because the since everything gets pulled from the profile, when they actually go in, they just have to make sure that it's updated, and then they just complete a total of 3 to 4 questions, which is the pathway goals, the pathway or the request that they're actually making, that they're hoping to get a stipend for, and then providing some additional information for that. Another benefit is that you can have multiple stipend programs utilizing the stipend module. So for example, we have a couple counties that are utilizing the stipend module for more than one stipend. We have two counties that are utilizing it for 3 different stipends. So that's pretty awesome. And then there's also, not only are you able to access everything, you also have access to a total of 5 different reports, which can be very instrumental in the work that you do. And lastly, I like to think that we have an amazing team. We're all super responsive. So if you ever need support regarding anything at any point, we're all always happy to help. Is there any questions? No? Okay.
There was just a question about our materials. So we have most of our written materials in simplified Chinese. Our videos are translated in Cantonese and with, I believe, Cantonese closed captioning. However, we do have staff that are bilingual in Cantonese and Mandarin and are able to help our participants if needed in that language.
Thank you, Rocio. Okay, so since there's no more questions, we're going to move into the actual content related part of our webinar today. So like I said, we're going to be covering pretty much everything regarding processing applications. So when you log into the registry, this is a little section where you're able to go in and look at the applications, and then you're able to run certain filters to be able to pull the applications. So we'll be covering a lot of that. And so my recommendations for utilizing the stipend module and some of the different tools that are available to you. Number one, I think that the applicants report is something that you can absolutely utilize. As a project management tool, that is actually something that for the FFN stipend that we run here in LA County, we utilize. So we download the report and then we, kind of make a couple changes to that report, add a couple columns for different things. And since there's three of us, we have a set workflow in which we divide the applications between everybody. And I know that every county is different. Some counties may have a workflow where you are dividing the applications, equally, or also you may have maybe one individual taking care of one specific thing, like W-9s, and somebody else is taking care of, looking for maybe professional growth plans, etc. But I think that if you utilize the applicant's report and kind of make some changes, it's really helpful to kind of keep track of everything, especially if you maybe upload that to your SharePoint or your Google Drive, whatever platform it is that you use, so that it is a live document that multiple people can work on. And then it can become very instrumental if you utilize the go to batch feature, in which you can switch the status of applications for multiple applications at once, which we are going to be covering. Also, the applicant's report is something that you can utilize to look for any duplicate applications. Sometimes you could potentially end up with duplicate applications. And number one, it could happen based on the filters that you've set in your setup. There is a question that allows you to pretty much set like a control on whether individuals can submit more than one application. And also there's something else regarding a request as well, like how many requests can someone submit. So if that is not set up correctly, then you can end up with duplicate applications. Sometimes also what can happen is if somebody goes in and they're using their browser, or especially maybe if they're using their phone or something, and they submit their application, and then maybe they click back and they click to the front again on their browser, or like forward, you can end up with a duplicate application. Or if somebody goes in and decides to edit their application, and they like do that once again, like kind of going back and forth on the browser, that can also result potentially in a duplicate application. But sometimes also individuals forget, right, that they maybe submitted the application, or maybe they don't know where to find their application, so they just go in and submit another one. So you can utilize the applicant's report by setting a couple filters, and I'm going to show you an example so that you can find those duplicate applications, so that as you're processing them and you're approving people, once you're switching people from approved to paid, you don't end up with leftover applications and you're like, wait, why does this person have like 4 or 5? So something to keep in mind for duplicate applications, you can always withdraw applications. There's a reason, which is, that you can select, which is for whenever anybody has submitted a duplicate application. But just keep in mind that you can only switch the status of an application if you've switched it to accepted. So if it's an accepted, you can switch it to any other status, or you can switch it back to applied. However, if you've switched an application already to approved or denied or withdrawn, in that scenario, you can't change the status of the application, then you would have to reach out to me, letting me know that you want to switch an application or multiple applications to a different status, and then I can go ahead and go do that for you. And also, if you have an applicant that maybe wants to change their application for any reason or wants to edit it, because sometimes that may happen where maybe somebody applies for one pathway. If you have multiple pathways in your application, and then halfway through the program they realize that they maybe aren't eligible for that, or maybe they're not going to meet the requirements, but they made the requirement for the other pathway and they want to switch their application. um, you can go ahead and switch it back to applied if it's an accepted status, and then they can go in and edit it by going to their profile, going to stipends, and then my stipends, and then clicking edit. But if you've already switched it to like approved or denied or any of that, and you want me to switch it for whatever reason, like if you denied someone but it turns out that they are eligible, then I can make that switch for you. Or if they need to switch the pathway or something and it's already approved, then you can let me know the information for the new pathway and I can go ahead and make that change. Or I could switch it to applied for you so that the applicant can go in and edit it. So just some things to keep in mind. Um, Another thing that I recommend is, once again, if you utilize the applicant's report as a way to have like a project management tool, or something for your team to use, and having that structure for your workflow in terms of who's going to be processing what applications or what specific documents or components of the application, then I do recommend adding those columns so that you can keep track of things. And then you can go ahead and go into the applications as well and either process them individually, which I'll show you what the different components of the application are and where you can do that. And even for that, you can allocate funds by each individual application, or you can go ahead and utilize the batch feature if you have multiple applications. And this is particularly helpful with bigger counties that are getting like 300 or over 1,000 applications or something. So that can be a really helpful tool. And then we'll go over the specific factors that go into creating batches. And then last recommendation that I have is, throughout your stipend program, I do recommend downloading the reports, just like running them and saving a copy for your records. It's really helpful. Because keep in mind that the registry is a live database. And so if an individual goes in and edits their profile, then that's going to change some of the data. So for example, if somebody is employed at a certain center, right, and they applied, and then like halfway through the stipend program, for some reason, they become unemployed, or maybe they switch and go work at a different center. Next time that you download the report, you're going to be able to see that reflected in the report. So then you would have something to look back to. So it's kind of like taking snapshots of the data at different times. So I do recommend downloading a report at least when you close out the application, and then also downloading a report once you approve people, and then downloading another report once you paid everybody out, just so that you can keep that for your records. And so once again, keep in mind the applicant's report, super helpful. You can download and keep copies of that. The applicant's report also has other different components. It's the report that has the majority of the information regarding the applicant, the pathway that they're selecting, and there's also a lot of educational information on there. Some self-reported stuff and also verified stuff like degrees and whatnot. So something to utilize. If at any point you have any questions regarding any of the reports, the stipend module user guide, which is linked to the slides, and Rocio is going to put the slides in the chat, or maybe she already put them in the chat. You can go ahead and download the user guide, and you can go to the table of contents, and then towards the bottom, there's a section with all of the reports and all the data fields for every single report. So if you ever have any questions regarding where you can find some data on a report, you can always refer back to that. And then once again, the process for looking for duplicates, utilizing the applicant's report. I do recommend that you always check for duplicates prior to switching the status of applications to approved, just because it makes it a lot easier, right? And And the way that you can do that is I usually look for the column with the registry IDs. I do some conditional formatting on that so that it can highlight all of the registry numbers that are duplicated, and then I hide a couple columns to only look at specific components like the date, the request ID, and then also the pathway. Because if you, for example, and I'll show you in the example that I created for this, if you have two pathways and you see that there's three applications or requests for an individual and two of them are for the same pathway, then that would be a very clear sign that that is probably a duplicate application. Also, if you go in and decide to process applications individually, in the request component, the request history of the application, where you go to request status, you can switch the status of applications there. And I'll go ahead and actually show you in the registry what that looks like. Next is the batch feature. If you utilize the applicant's report to, create that project management tool, and if you didn't implement that this time, you could always do it for the next year. But if you're going to switch the status of multiple applications at once, it can be really helpful to utilize the batch feature, because then you don't have to like manually switch the status of like 200 applications or something. But there is a specific process for doing that. And so the way that you would do it is based on three factors for creating the batches. So the first factor is the pathway type. So if you have more than one pathway or tracks in your stipend program, like for example, college credit and professional development, then you would create one batch based firstly on the pathway. Then it would be based on the status that you're changing it to. So if, for example, you have 25 applications for professional development and you are approving 15 of those and 10 of those you're denying, then that would be two separate batches. So it would be one batch for professional development that you're approving, one batch for professional development that you're denying. And then the last factor would be the value type. So if you are approving applications for 21 hours, out of those 15, maybe 10 of them, you're approving them for 21 hours, and 5 of those 15 you are approving for 12 hours, then that would be two separate batches. So it's like you kind of narrow it down based on those three different factors. So then one batch would be professional development that you're approving for 21 hours. You could switch all of those applications to approved at once. And then the same would apply if you're denying or withdrawing. It would just have to be for the same denial or withdrawn reason. So some examples for you to always refer to, like batch number one, once again, would be like professional development that you're approving for 21 hours. If you have a couple other that's for 9 hours, then that would be a separate batch. Another example could be college credit that you're approving for a total of 9 units. If you're approving a couple of applications for, 12 units, then that would be a separate batch. And then the same if you are, like, for example, if you have like a retention pathway or something, or even college credit or professional development that you're denying, and if you're denying them for a duplicate application, or maybe because they're not eligible, then that would be a separate batch for the duplicate applications that you're denying and a separate batch for the applications that you're denying because they're not eligible, or maybe another batch for the ones that didn't submit all of their documentation. And so then it's really helpful if you're utilizing this and you have a project management tool where you're kind of utilizing the applicant's report to keep track of those things, because then you can run filters on some of those different things, like run a filter for just the PD applications, then for the ones that you're approving, and then for the amount of units. So then you can just see on your Excel, like, okay, I'm approving these applications. I'm going to go to the batch feature and only select those and switch the status. Then also the other feature, well, before I go into this really quickly, is there any questions regarding any of that? I know that's a lot of information and I talk really fast. So just let me know if there's any questions.
There was a question about using the date range filter to pull by fiscal year. So when you get to the demonstration portion, you can show them the date range filter too.
Yes. And then all of the other different filters, which actually I do personally prefer to use the date range because I don't know, I like it. So the next component is the documents, which is something that you can also utilize for your workflow. So when you go to documents, it'll usually give you a summary of the documents that are awaiting that still need to be verified or looked at. And you can also run filters to see the documents based on either the application date range, or you can do it based on a specific document upload range, which I think if you do the latter, the document upload range can be really helpful, because then you can set a filter for when you opened up your application to when you closed it, or your document deadline, and then either look at the documents down below, which I'll show you what that looks like, or you can also just export an Excel report based on that. And we recently did some development on that so that you can set that filter range for the upload documents and export the Excel so that it will give you all of those documents. It'll give you the most recent document that an applicant has submitted within that date range. And I'll show you some of the different things to look at that can be really helpful, because they'll give you when the most recent document was uploaded and the document name or the document type, so that if you can like refer back to that and be like, okay, well, I can go ahead and take a look at some of these applicants because they've uploaded some documents, and you don't have to like individually have to go through every single application to try to find out if they've submitted documents. So now we're actually going to go into the registry so that we can walk through some of these things. So when you log into your
Angel, sorry. There was
Yes.
also a question if you can also make sure to demonstrate the batch feature,
Yes,
how
yes.
that runs. Thank you.
Yeah. So I am gonna demonstrate all of that. And if I forget anything or we're running out of time, let me know and we could also set time on the side. But when you log in to the registry, here's our resource website, by the way. So if you have any questions, you can actually access the user guide here. I did send out the link as well after the last webinar, but I'll make sure to include it once I send out the recording for this one as well, so that you can just click on that. But all of that is going to be on here. So when you go to your side toolbar, you're going to go to stipend administration. I have access to all of the stipends, so you're going to see all of them. For you, you would automatically be routed to the page with the 5 features for your stipend. If you have more than access to more than one stipend, like for the counties that have, are running 3 stipends, then you would see like the list of the 3 stipends or however many stipends you have in your county. So for the purposes of today, we're going to go into our test account. As you can see, this is the section that we covered during our last webinar, everything regarding the setup. Today, we're going to be looking at the application status component, the documents, maybe potentially the apply payment, and for sure the reports. So as you can see on the application status, it'll give you a breakdown of how many applications you have currently in applied mode, and accepted and approved and in paid. And usually the paid, if you've been utilizing the stipend module for more than 1 year, it'll kind of give you the number for the past couple of years. So the first thing that I want to show is the report. So when you click on reports, you're going to see the 5 different reports that you have access to. So the applicant's report, we call this one the long name report, because it's kind of a really long name compared to the other ones. And then the applicant demographics report, the employer, and the CDE, CDSS, which we have some upcoming developments on this one, which I'll share a little bit more later. But for pretty much the majority of the reports, you can run filters so that you can run a report based on those filters. I believe it's just the employer outreach report that doesn't allow you to do that, and it'll just like automatically download a report for you. But if you go to the applicant's report, all of the other reports are going to give you this option to run a report by those specific filters. So you can run a report actually for just one person based on their first and last name. You can also run a report based on the period. You can also run a report based on statuses. So you can run a report just for the people that you've approved. You can run a report for the people that you've denied, or you can run a report for everybody that you've paid. Usually what I'll do is personally, if it's just for that one fiscal year, then I'll just set a submit day range for, the beginning of the fiscal year to the end of that fiscal year. And then I'll click all, and then I can just, filter for the approved applications or the denied, but you can also just run the report based on that. So you would, do it based on that. I usually do July 1st to the end of this fiscal year, or at least to like today, and then do all, and then I would just run the report and it'll automatically download it. And so I do have an example of what the applicant reports looks like so that you can see, and some things that I want to point out. So I always, I just made it a little pretty. I added some data to be able to filter through things, and added color to be able to like tell which ones are my headers. But the applicant's report, like I said, includes all of the information for the individual, like first name, last name, email address, a lot of that stuff. It also has a lot of educational information as well. And then it has everything regarding their stipend application. So this one is the one that you can utilize to make a project management tool. So for example, I added some extra columns at the very beginning so that if somebody would be, assigned to looking for transcripts, and they can go to every single application, and then did some conditional formatting so that if, I go to this participant's profile and I'm like, okay, they submitted their transcript, check. They submitted their W-9, check. They submitted their professional growth plan, check. So, they're going to get approved. And so now I know that that particular individual is ready to go, so that if I'm going to do a batch feature, I can just go ahead and, run some filters on the request so that it only shows my approved, and then I can go ahead and use the batch feature if needed. So that's something to keep in mind, something that I think is really helpful. Once again, if you want to use the applicant's report to check for duplicates, I use the same report as well. And I just hid some of the columns for information that I don't necessarily use. And I ran some conditional formatting on the registry ID. So I went to conditional formatting, I went to rules, and then click duplicate values. And, you can select that you want to highlight things in red or any other color. And then I also set everything in order. So I went to the registry IDs and sorted them smallest to largest, so that every single applicant can, like all of their requests can be grouped together. So for example, even if you have individuals that submit applications with like a separation time, so maybe somebody submitted an application, they forgot, and then a week later, they go in and submit it again. If you sort it from smallest to largest, it'll group all of the data together. And so I can see here, for example, that this individual, even though they have two requests, right? They have requests for two different pathways. So in my test account, I have it that they can submit 3 requests. So they can submit for all 3 pathways if they would be eligible. So that would be fine. But then when I look at some of the other data, for example, I see that this person has a total of 3 requests. And actually, if I look at their parent ID, so just to make it differentiate, the parent ID is the application ID. But within one application, individuals can submit more than one request. So they could maybe submit college credit and professional development. So each request would have a different number. And so you can see here for these 3 individuals that, first of all, if I look at their pathway type, they have 1 application for professional development and 2 applications for college credit. So that automatically lets me know this is probably a duplicate application for the college credit. But also when I look at their parent ID, it is 2 different applications. So I know that they submitted 2 different applications, not just an additional request within one application. So then I would automatically be able to go in and be like, okay, you can also look at the date. Obviously, for the test account, I submitted all the applications yesterday to be able to do the demo, but you would also be able to see like potentially different dates. So that's something to look at. So those are some things that I recommend taking a look at. The registry IDs, running some conditional formatting on that. Then once you sort everything from smallest to largest so that all of the applications for one applicant are grouped together. You can look at the pathway type. And if you notice that there are more than one application or one request for the same pathway, then you could take a look at some of the other things like the parent ID, the request ID, and then the submit date. So those just some recommendations. If you actually want to go in and look at each individual application, you can go ahead and do that by going to the application status. So then on here, you're going to be able to see all the filters that you can run to see the applications down here below. So you can see applications based on a date range as well. You can do it based on the period. You can also do it based on the request status. And you could also look up individual people. Usually if I'm looking up an individual person, I'll just do it based on the registry ID because I'll automatically populate that person. Because especially if you're a large county and you do it by first name, then, there could be multiple people that have the same name. So it just, it can simplify the process for you. And there's a couple other filters like the language, and then also the provider type. So if you're only going to be processing like family childcare home applications, you can do that. You can also run filters to look for applications that maybe have only submitted a W-9. And then also if individuals don't have any transcripts or any training records. So that would be helpful if you're like, usually I do recommend that you go through the process of like the 9 people that are not eligible first, because that kind of cleans everything up for you. And then you can focus on the individuals that you are going to approve. But really, that's just like a workflow preference. You can also just download the report here as well, the applicant's report. So you can just click on that and it'll automatically download it for you. But I just like going to the reports and, setting those specific filters. So down here in these little arrows as well, if you're going to be looking for applications, especially for the bigger counties, it's really helpful to do that. You can also do the registry IDs from smallest to largest. You could also do the last name and the first name on alphabetical order. So if I want it from A to Z, or if I want it from Z to A, you can go ahead and do that. You can also do it based on the applied date to see it from the oldest application date to the most recent. And if you have more than one period, you can also do that, which I believe the majority of the counties actually only have their applications for one period. You can also click on this to open up an email, and it'll automatically like go to your Outlook if it's connected with the applicant's email address that is on file on the registry. And also in the individual section, you can look up notes. So here, if you don't want to have to click on their application, you can just really quickly click on the notes and be like, oh, okay, here are some of the notes that are, here for the applicant's application. But if you actually want to look at an application, then you would click on the little radio button, and then it'll automatically take you to the application. And the different components for the application are here. So you would see all the participant information that is part of their profile, like the email, the phone number, their address, that sort of stuff. And then you also are able to see their verified degree, like the quick summary, if they do have a verified degree, if they submitted their transcript. And you are also able to click on their education and training report. Because remember, sometimes individuals, if they're doing professional development, if they uploaded, not everybody now is uploading certificates. Individuals, if they're actually doing trainings, signing via the registry, then whoever the training person is may just confirm that they completed it on the registry, and that actually that data will show on their education and training report. So just something to look out for. Then also,
Angel, there was a quick question since you're on the screen. Can you show how to add a note?
Yeah. So I'm going to go down the application components, and I will cover that in a second. So the next thing, you are able to see the participant's employment information. So their employer, if there is an agency attached to the employer, that's going to be there as well. Also, the kind of provider it is, if it's not licensed, if it's a center, if it's an FCC, and then their job title, their start date, and then also other additional information. So sometimes you'll see like QRIS here, if that's a QRIS site. And then also here, it'll send you it'll show you if the individual already has their employment verified on the registry. So if their employer has employer admin access and they've gone in to verify their employment, then you would see the date when it was verified. If not, you can click on here and it'll like send them an email, and you would enter the name of the supervisor and then um the email address for that person. So you can always go ahead and send that email to remind them that they need to verify their employment if you are implementing verified employment on the registry. If not, I know some of you are using like the employment verification forms, and I know some counties have, kind of gradually made that transition. So if you have any questions about that, we can always meet separately. If you have any questions regarding that, Rocio is our expert with everything employment, employer admin access. So she can always provide resources for that. Then the request history is the actual application, or the requests that they've made within the application. So you would see the request ID, when the application was submitted, the current status of the application, and then the additional information for that. Whether what the pathway is, what the pathway detail is, whether it's like units or hours, or the permit information if you're doing permits, those sorts of things. And then the goals that they've selected. I know sometimes there's a little bit of confusion with the pathway goals and the pathways. So the pathway is what they're actually applying for to get money for. The pathway goal is just different things that you can select that individuals can give you a little bit of additional information so that you can, support them in providing them with resources if needed. Next thing would be as well, you can, if you want to switch the application of the status of an application individually, you would go here and click edit. Then you would click on the applied, and then that would give you a drop down for all of the applications statuses. So if I decide to approve this this application, then it's going to give me a drop down for the amount that I'm actually approving them for. So for example, the individual here, right, they said that they were applying for 12 units, but say that you look at their transcript and they actually only completed 9 units. So I'm only approving them from 9 units. So I would do that. And then the data that you are entering, that you are actually approving them for, that's what's going to show up on your reports. And then you can either suppress the communication or not, which I have some examples in the PowerPoint of what the communication that is sent out, because you're not able to edit the communications that get sent out when you change the approved or denied statuses or all of that. So usually I do recommend that you suppress the communication, because then, especially if you're a really big county and you are approving people as you're going, and then people get that notice, then other people may start calling you and being like, hey, I heard that this person got their application approved. Then you will get bombarded with calls. And then at the end, like for example, for the FFM program, what we're doing, we don't switch the statuses of the applications until we know who's going to be approved and denied. And then we create letters, and we can do a mail merge with some of the data in the reports to just kind of have all the letters, done really quickly. And then we sent out those notices to individuals. And then you just click on save, and now that application is approved. If you want to make the allocation of funds here, you can do that individually, but there's a faster way of doing that, which we'll cover next time. But you would just do that. Obviously, you can't switch the application once you've approved it. I have another level of access, so I could do it. But if say that the application wasn't accepted or applied, then if you want to deny or withdraw, you would click on that, and instead of giving you like a pathway detail or something, it'll give you the reason. And there's a lot of reasons that you can choose from, and you would select the one that is closest to the reason why you're not approving them for the stipend. So say this person is just not qualified or something. So just heads up. These documents are the required documents that you've selected in your setup. So just be aware that applicants do see this on their end as well. So just keep in mind that if you don't want individuals to see all of the documents because they may not apply to them, that I would recommend that you only select the ones that apply to everybody, like a W-9 or I don't know, the supplemental forms or the professional growth plan, and just make it very explicit in all of your materials that if somebody is applying for one track, they have to submit the rest of the other documentation like PD certificates or transcripts or whatever. The documents are down here. Obviously, this is a test account, so I don't have any documents on file, but you would be able to see them. You would see some of the information like the document number, the type of document, when it was uploaded. Also, you can click on view and you would be able to see the document. And then, yeah, Des, I'll answer your question in a second. And so then once you're able to see the documents and you ensure that people have submitted it, then you can click on mark check, and then that will say that it has been submitted. It'll make a note for whoever the stipend administrator checked and approved it, and then it'll give you the date when that was done, so that if there's multiple people working on that application, you would be able to see like, okay, my coworker already, saw that this document was uploaded. I don't have to check for that. I can just check for some of the other things. And then it also, anytime that you change the status of an application on the stipend notes, it'll automatically make a note for you, and it'll make a note for who made that status change and what date. And then also, if you want to like physically add a note, you can click on add note, and you can type like on this date, sent an email about missing documents or something. And then you would be able to add the note. And so then now anytime another person comes and looks at the application, they can click on the plus and be able to see that note. Also, you are able to send individuals an email through here by clicking on send missing document email. And so then it would say, you already completed the W-9, but you are missing this, and you can edit that message and then send it. And yes, we're running out of time. So hopefully, Des, I can answer your question if you want to unmute yourself.
It was just really quick. Hi there. Thank you. I was just wondering, for the required document section, what section under the stipend admin tile can I make that adjustment?
I don't remember off of the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's under the open period manager, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, but I can, I did see your email. I will follow up with you, but it should be in the open period manager if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so we have like 10 minutes. Sorry, I talk so much. Okay, so last thing, the go to batch feature, if you want to do multiple applications at once, you would click on the go to batch feature. And then on the go to batch feature, you're going to see some filters as well. But once again, remember the first factor that you would switch applications statuses to is by the pathway. So you would click on the pathway type, and then you would click on the one that you're creating a batch for. So in this case, I'm going to do professional development hours. And then for this one, you would either do it if they're in applied or accepted. Once again, because you can't switch the statuses of applications if they're already in approved, denied, or withdrawn. For that, you have to reach out to me. So just heads up. And then you can either select all of the requests. If you see, like they are for the correct hours, I would just verify with your project management tool and cross-reference that. You can also select if you want to process more than a couple records, you could process up to 250 records at a time or applications. So just a heads up. But once you see, I'm going to say that just for today's example, I'm approving all of these applications because they're all, for 21 hours, they're all getting approved. They're all professional development. I would click on evaluate selections. That will get rid of all the applications that you didn't select so that you only see the ones that you've selected, so that once again, you can cross-reference. And then you would click on change status. So then you will change the status. If you're doing approved, it's going to pop up this box, which once again, that's where you're going to enter what you're actually approving them for as a stipend administrator. So I'm approving all of them. Even though here they're all for 21 hours, if say I'm only approving them for 12, all of them, then I would enter the number. Or if I'm denying them, then once again, if I have to deny them all for the same reason, so you have to create separate batches if you have different reasons that you're denying them for. So I'll just say that I'm approving all of this for 12 hours, and I'm once again going to suppress the email so that they don't get notified. And then I would just save, and boom, now you're done. You've created a batch. Is there any questions regarding that?
There was a question as to what causes documents to go into waiting status. I'm not super familiar with that feature.
Yeah, so for that, I think that one just means that they haven't been reviewed. And then lastly, just really quickly before I go back to the PowerPoint, because I'm going to zoom through everything, the document feature, once again, if you want to download that Excel, you can go ahead and do it either by the application date range. I recommend doing the document upload range and just setting, a document. Either if you're going to check for documents and download the report multiple times, and just kind of keeping track of when you downloaded it so that then you can do it again. But I just personally recommend doing it from the beginning of when your application opened to when it closed, because somebody may upload a document once again and it's going to give you the most recent. So you would set that, click to filter, and then you would run the Excel report and then it will download it. And so then I have the example here of the one that I downloaded. Obviously, I only have 2 documents on here because that's my test account. But the things that you can look for that I think are most important is the document name and then the document status as well. So the document name, that's the document that individual enters. So you'll be able to see whether it's a W-9, a professional growth plan, a PD certificate, all of those sorts of things. And then also the document status is just helpful to know, like if they submitted a transcript, it'll tell you if it's verified or not. And then also usually anything that has a different status like added or submitted, it means that it's not something that we verify. So it's just been a document that's been added to the profile. So yeah, that's all of that. I'm going to go back to the presentation real quick. So that we can cover the last couple of things. Really quickly, we have a couple updates. We have new pathway options that are live now, so that if you have any other stipend programs that you're going to implement, there's a couple different options that you can go ahead and take a look at. We also have some upcoming development to the open period manager, because I know sometimes that was a little confusing for people. So we're going to kind of streamline that a little bit. And then also, we are in the talks of potentially adding filters so that you can control people applying based on job titles. And then also we are in the process of talking about doing a second version of the CDSS report that will kind of have like a pivot table in another tab that will kind of summarize all of your data. So some exciting stuff coming up. So we'll keep you posted regarding that. Yay, awesome. And then I added the communication messages just for you, for your reference, because I know sometimes people have questions regarding that. So the approval message is here, the paid message. That's if you don't suppress the communication. I know a lot of counties usually will suppress it and just kind of write their own letter, which once again, you could use some of the reports to create a mail merge and just draft a template of the letter and then select specific data components in the letter that match an Excel sheet, and then just create that mail merge so it creates all of your letters at once. If you need some support with that, I did help a county last year, so I can also help you with that. Just let me know. And then the denial message is here as well. We don't have enough time to cover any of this, but it's on here just so that you can take a look at and kind of see that these are the next steps. Ideally, my goal is for every single county, like no later than maybe June or the end of July, really, to have everything for this fiscal year closed out. So I'm going to be checking everybody's stipend modules and just kind of reaching out to people. If you need support as you're going through the process of closing things out, you can reach out and let me know. And we can always set some time just to specifically do that or go over those steps. But we're also going to have a webinar, most likely either May or end of maybe early June. I was going to go over a little bit regarding each of the different reports. So the applicant's report, once again, has all of that educational information, and you can go ahead and utilize it as the project management tool, the long name report. That's the report that actually has the participants' addresses, the applicants' addresses. So that's the report that you can use to give that to your fiscal department when they're cutting checks, if they're going to be mailing out the checks to the individuals that received the stipend. So that's really helpful. And there's also some information regarding college credits and stuff. The demographics report, pretty self-explanatory. It gives you demographic data for the applicants. You can really utilize that at the end of the year to kind of see where the money went and, just kind of seeing for strategizing for the next year in terms of reaching out to specific demographics. The employer outreach report, you can utilize that if you are implementing employment verification on the registry, so that then you could do some outreach. And then once again, the CDSS report has information that you can utilize for your when you're reporting back to the state. And that's the one that we're going to kind of be doing a 2.0 version type of thing. But just keep in mind that for that report, that one, it is only really available once you make the allocation based on the funding stream that is workforce pathways. Some best practices, I recommend having a workflow plan, especially if you have multiple stipend administrators. Getting support from us, specifically when you're closing out your stipend, just to make sure that, you feel confident in doing that. Also utilizing all of our resources. We have so many resources for your applicants as well, videos, everything. I do recommend that just for the purposes of the end of year reporting, that even if individuals are not necessarily applying for a college credit or a PD pathway, that you have messaging to encourage people to upload all of their qualification data, just because based on the reporting guidelines from last year, there was information that was being asked that if, you had information from where people started to where people ended by the end of the stipend year, it would just be really helpful. And then also, if for any reason you get the reporting guidelines for this year before we get access to them, I would please greatly appreciate it if you can send those over to us, so that we can also strategize in ways that we can support you, with gathering any additional information that may be needed. And then, just employer admin access and employment verification, just kind of having an understanding of that, so that if you are implementing that in your county, you could use messaging that will help people understand. The next stipend module webinar, once again, will be May or June. So I'll be sending out something regarding that. Here are all of our resources. They're linked so that you can access them: videos, the user guide, the prep document, all the information for your applicants, so that they can reach out to us if they have questions regarding just anything registry related. And then my contact information, if you have any questions regarding the stipend module, or you need any support with anything regarding stipend module or integration as well. Is there any questions? I know we kind of zoomed through the last 10 and I already took 2 minutes of your time. If not, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you joining. I hope that was really helpful. And yes, I will send out an email in the next couple of days with the recording for the webinar, the presentation slides as well, and then some of the other resources linked too. Yay, thank you everyone for joining. If you don't have any questions, I hope you have an amazing rest of the week and an amazing weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angel. We look forward to the new features coming.
Yay.
Thank you.
See you next
Take
time.
care. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Rocio.
Yeah, and then if anybody has any question, you can stay behind and we can hopefully answer your questions.
Hal, I have a quick question,
Yes.
and maybe this has come up for a few others. When I am using the missing documents email, send missing documents email,
Mhm.
when I click on that, if I know someone has submitted their W-9, but it has come in through supplemental documents,
Mhm.
and so it may not get checked. I haven't checked it yet.
Okay.
So it's showing up in that sending message and I want to unclick it. I can't unclick it. So what I've been doing is putting in that message, the documents that I do need that are
Okay.
missing, and then putting a comment that says, I have or we have your W-9. But if you could
Okay.
look into us
Yeah,
being
I'll-
able to maybe uncheck that box if we don't need that box there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely look into that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Okay, thank you. Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye, Rocio.